My brother's unhinged rule meant I had to choose between my family and my future. My brother Wesley announced at dinner when he was 15 that pronouns like you were too intimate for people to use with him. It's not showing me proper respect, he said. From now on, we had to speak to him in third person only. Instead of, did you finish your homework? We had to say, did Wesley finish Wesley's homework? My parents told me to just go along with it, but the rule expanded every year. First, you was banned, then your became off limits too. We couldn't say your room anymore. It had to be Wesley's room. Eventually, even he was too direct when we talked about him to other people. Every single reference had to use his full name. If you slipped up, Wesley would explode. The punishments got worse over time. 1 violation meant hours of lectures about boundaries and respect. 2 violations meant the silent treatment for days. 3 meant he'd destroy something of yours. He snapped my headphones in half once because I said, can you turn down the TV? Instead of, can Wesley turn down the TV? My parents enabled all of it. They restructured their entire way of speaking just to keep the peace. They made me practice sentences before family dinners so I wouldn't mess up. They acted like I was the problem whenever Wesley had a meltdown over a pronoun. Friends stopped coming to our house because Wesley would lecture them for hours if they spoke to him normally. One girl from my soccer team said, hey, are you Wesley? When she met him and he screamed in her face for 10 minutes about consent and boundaries. She never came back and I never invited anyone over again. When I was 23, I met a guy named Dominic at work. He was kind and funny and came from the most normal family I had ever seen. His parents laughed at dinner, they teased each other, they used pronouns like regular human beings. I fell in love with him fast because being around his family felt like finally being able to breathe. We dated for 2 years before his parents asked to meet my family. I kept making excuses. Work was busy. My parents were traveling. Eventually, I ran out of ways to dodge it. Dominic's mom said she felt like I was hiding something and she was worried about me. I tried to explain the rule to Dominic the night before the dinner. He stared at me for a long time. He said, that's not normal. You know that's not normal, right? I told him I knew. He asked if his parents should be warned. I said I didn't know how to explain it without sounding insane. I said maybe Wesley would behave with guests. Dominic looked doubtful, but he said we'd get through it together. The dinner was at my parents' house on a Saturday night. Wesley sat at the head of the table even though that was supposed to be my dad's seat. Nobody said anything. Dominic's parents were warm and polite. Everything felt almost normal for about 15 minutes. Then Dominic's mom turned to Wesley and smiled. She said, so Wesley, how do you like your job? Dominic mentioned you work in IT. Wesley's face went cold. He set down his fork very slowly. He said, we don't use direct pronouns in this house. Dominic's parents looked at each other and laughed nervously. His dad said, I'm sorry, what do you mean? Wesley didn't smile. He said, please rephrase your question as, does Wesley like Wesley's job? The word you is not acceptable here. The table went silent. My mom cleared her throat and said, Wesley has some preferences about how people address him. It's just easier if we respect them. Dominic's dad tried again. He said, okay, well, does Wesley enjoy working in IT? Wesley nodded slowly. Then Dominic's mom made a mistake. She said, that's interesting. How long have you been doing that? Wesley slammed his hand on the table so hard the glasses shook. He said, you just said you again. I already explained the rule. Are you doing this on purpose? My mom jumped in. She said, please, just try to use his name instead. It's really not that hard. Dominic's dad stood up. His voice was calm but firm. He said, this is not healthy. Whatever this is, you've let it go on way too long. This young man needs help, not accommodation. My dad said, you don't understand our family. Wesley started screaming that Dominic's parents were assaulting him with their pronouns. My mom was trying to calm him down while shooting angry looks at me like this was somehow my fault. Dominic's mom reached across the table and took my hand. She looked me right in the eyes and said, sweetheart, you don't have to live like this. I looked at my parents. They weren't even looking at me. They were focused entirely on Wesley, on managing his feelings, on protecting him from consequences, just like always. I looked at Dominic and he nodded. I stood up and said, you're right, I don't have to live like this. I walked out the front door with Dominic and his parents. I could hear my family screaming behind me, but I didn't turn around. That was 3 years ago, and I married Dominic last spring. My family wasn't invited to the wedding.